I'm live. How's everybody doing? All right, so from last time, people are still coming in the room. So last time we were working on audio, but today we're going to change what we're working on. The work that we did last week is already in. We released the 3.5 preview the other day. You can find that on our NuGets. There's a preview release for 3.8.5 that has the work that we did on F Audio. It has the work that we did in Vulkan, all the work that's been done over the last several months to get us a working version of MonoGame that we can do as a new release. Mostly targeting, getting the new Vulkan and DX12 backends in place enough that people can start using them and giving us feedback on. Hello, Rob Utterly, Soft Savage. So that's mostly what we've been working on, is that we're going to change gears here because we're going to work on the new save API. So that's what our goal for today is. Let's get my screen shared and we can start talking about it. All right, here we go. All right, we're live. So what I'm going to talk about is this guy. So this is a pull request that Dom put up a couple months back, or February 12th. It's been sitting for a while, that we need to get done. So the idea is that XNA used to have these storage container classes. Let's see if I can find that. I don't know if this will be the right one, but it'll work for now. Used to have these storage container classes, and the idea was that this is used for save data. Was the original idea, but it was designed around old concepts when it was originally designed way back in old, like I guess it was XNA 3 or 2 or something like that. So let's see. That's this is a good sample, maybe. Yeah, it was based on this async callback classes, which or some old stuff. And then you'd call begin show storage device guide. And then you'd have to wait for this async to complete. And then once it completes, notice how this is in the update. It would wait until it's completed. Then it says, okay, now end showing the storage device guide. And then check and see if the final device is connected. And if it is, then call do save, and save my game. And then it would come in here and create the save game data object. And then it would go open a container. This is where the storage container part of it comes in. Open a container, open a file, which is interesting. Why is it opening a file? That's interesting. Serializes it, closes, and disposes it. Oh, because wait, why is it doing that? That's interesting. Oh, it was using the container path, which is another thing, making the assumption that the container actually has file storage as a backup. Which is the case is true in some cases, but not all. So this system is kind of old, and that's the main problem. Hello, Alan359. Thanks for joining us here. So the problem is this API is pretty old, and that's part of our problem. Is this an old API? And we wanted to. This is why we originally removed it. Was because back when this was originally in MonoGame, and we removed it some time back because it just wasn't very portable to consoles. Because some of the consoles do not have files as the native way that it saves data. It saves it into a more abstract system. And the file paths have very specific rules, and sometimes you would have to mount the save system, like tell it like, hey, load the save system first, and then or not load, but mount the save data for this player, save my data, and then unmount it. So there's a lot of complications there. So the API wasn't very good for this. So what we've done is we decided back in February that we're going to bring those storage container classes back and enhance them, in order to support, all the platforms that we want to support, PCs, consoles, mobile, and anything else that might come about. So this is originally Dom's, PR for that. We did a bunch of review on it, but there's still some fundamental things that I think aren't right. So instead of just continuing to poke at it, and try to fix it piece by piece, I figured I would pull this PR into my local machine and go through it in detail and kind of rework things. So we kind of get something that covers everything. Again, Dom, doesn't know the console APIs, and while I know them, I can't talk about them publicly. I know the basics of the stuff for mobile, and I know the stuff for PC, so I'm probably more qualified to look at this as a whole and come up with a complete solution, that works for all the platforms. So let's get started with that. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from this PR, which there's something down here. Where is it? I always forget how to do this. Somewhere down here, there's a link that I can use to check out a branch of this. Command line instructions. There we go. Okay, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to go to my command line here. Okay, cool. So now I have that. I'm going to first merge develop back into this. I keep this in the center of the screen so it's easier to see. It also maybe, oh God, they made this a lot. Okay, I'm not going to dive into this right now. I wanted to just make it bigger, but that kind of thwarted me. So with that, so we have a conflict in console checked, which was deleted, and auto merging. I guess that's the only thing, is that one conflict. So I think I can just come in here and use the remote version, which is deleted. So I'm going to merge this in. All right. I'm just going to push this to my repo so I have it. All right. Oh, I guess it pushed it back to the main thing. Interesting. That's fine. It's going to build it for me in the background, tell me if I did anything wrong. All right, so what's next here? So now that we have that, I wanted to get back to here. So what I want to do, so this should have that stuff in it. Let's go find it. Should be in storage, storing container, storage device. So these are in here now. Immediately, just fix that while I'm at it. So we're going to work with these classes and kind of straighten them out so that we have the API that we want here. And then at the same time, I'm going to work on the native API side of it, specifically for PC at the moment, with the idea that eventually we want to make sure that it also works on console. But I think I want to push the platform-specific work down to the native API so that all platforms can potentially implement them differently. Yeah, or to the platform API or intermediate platform API. So each platform can kind of handle it differently. But first, I kind of need a way to test it. So I'm going to start by actually adding it to one of our unit test setups. So I'm going to do that first as a beginning point here. So framework, do we have any? Oh, looks like Tom added storage tests. Awesome. There we go. All right, so we had some storage tests in here. So let's keep with that. If anybody has any questions as we go here, just shout them out. I will stop and answer questions. Let me add my banner at the bottom there. There we go. Awesome. All right. So let's start with, so this is the storage testy setup. Let's just run it and see what happens. Fails. Awesome. Oh, wait. No, that's something different. There we go. Okay, that one succeeded. This one failed. Let's run it again just in case. Okay. So we have a bunch of broken tests. Let's first, but part of the thing of this is I wanted to first make sure that the API is the way that we want it, because otherwise it's not going to be very useful. All right. Am I too loud? Am I not loud enough? Is the music too loud? Just let me know. And let's start diving into this. So you added a bunch of tests. That's good. Which one is the one that is? Thanks, Crottom Jacob. Let's see. I want to, hang on a second, let me. No, I didn't mute my phone. I should have done that. Let's do that real quick. Sorry, just trying to handle a couple things here. All right, so back to this. So the general API is you create a storage device, then you call create file on the stream or on the container, or you create the storage device, you open the container, passing it, what you want to call the container. It doesn't matter what it is. Once you have the container, then you can call operations on that container. So here's create file, which returns you a stream that you can then write to. And then you can then read back from the container or whatever, and that is the essence of the API. The only thing that's a little concerning to me here is that it doesn't, like what it's not doing here that we do need to do is that we need to be able to know when the work is done on this container. Because some platforms require you to say, hey, commit these changes. These changes are done, commit them. you know, Benedillo 8731. Thank you. Hello. Let's see. So this disposes the stream, which is good, but the problem here is we don't know when you're done with the container, and that's kind of something that needs to happen. And I think how it's set up, the storage container is actually a disposable. Yeah, it is. And well, technically, it'll eventually shut down the container. Yeah, it basically needs like a, yes, Robert Lee, yes, it needs some sort of flush or a, hey, I'm done. And it could be a dispose. You know, the dispose makes it, I mean, it doesn't make it obvious. And if you don't do it, it will flush it eventually. You know, but you kind of really do want something that tells it, hey, now's the time to apply these operations. Because if we don't, then it's kind of uncontrolled. You know, so one way to do it, and I don't think storage device needs a dispose technically. Yeah, it doesn't really need it. It's kind of just it's organizing things. It's not really the actual save system. So yeah, let's, we want to make sure that, so like we could say that this test here is not valid. Let's just run this one. I think it's also failing, but I want to double check it. Yeah. So it's failing, but we're going to take a look at that in a moment. Here's our results from that. So we could probably do something like, that's the typical thing that you do in order to verify that things get cleaned up the way you expect it to. So this is probably more like what we would suggest someone write their code like, is use a using to open the container, do all your container writes, and then close it. That's more correct, because then the container gets its chance to dispose and clean up. And that's for creating files. There's also deleting files and creating directories and deleting directories. All those things have to be have to go through this API in order to ensure that on all platforms it works like you would expect it to work, and give you something that's unified. So yeah, I think this is the API we're aiming at here. So let's go take a look at what it's actually doing and see if there's some things we can fix. Let's ignore the fact that this doesn't have any documentation. Free space, platform free space. Yeah, this is reasonable. Where's this implemented? I want to get to the platform calls. Yeah, storage native, container native. So since these have no implementations, it's not going to work. So I need to add implementations here in order for things to function. And I've used this. And while I could implement it in a different system, I'm going to implement it here first, and then we can adapt everything else. Wow. That's a lot of documentation for one method. I don't like that at all. Especially an internal method. Yeah, no, goodbye. I don't care what any of this stuff says. It's a bunch of nonsense for this. So yeah, we were going to redirect all this native stuff down to the native API, I believe. That's going to be the thing that works the best, and not try to do this high level stuff, because that's never going to work very well. You know, we're going to end up having to do per platform things anyways. Maybe every method that writes, so let's show this one. So Roz says, maybe every method that writes should mark the flush as dirty so that it only flushes if certain methods were called. Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. We still need to notify the container like, hey, things are done, you know. Yeah, we need to notify when things are done, and then yes, it should mark things as dirty, so it only does a minimal set of changes. So that if you do silly things like create a file, then delete the file, that it doesn't create it in the first place. You want it to collapse that stuff and clean things up, and that's the idea. Is that we want. This was some discussion that we had originally when we were talking about this. We had some discussion about it. Like, there's two different approaches here. One is to kind of try to do it as some sort of an atomic API, right? Where you open the container, you do a bunch of operations, then you close the container. And when you close the container, it does all the writes and work. To do that, though, you have to store your results into memory. And the concern that I have about that, as much as I do want to do that, the big concern about that is that sometimes you do have big save data. Now, for most platforms, you shouldn't. I worked on one game a long time ago that that basically, I guess, was crashing PlayStation Network. This was in the early days of PlayStation 4, when their first cloud save stuff came up. This game happened to save like 300 megabytes of save data whenever you saved, which was ridiculous. And it was because the original game saved all their save data as XML. And not only that, how they did their save data was they just saved all the levels of the game in the current state that they were. So their content, which was the definition for the level, would get resaved with changes for save data and in an XML. And we never compressed it or anything, and it ended up being like 300 megabytes of save data. Our mistake that we didn't address that earlier, but it was within the rules. It was like, you can have 300 megabytes save data. It's not a problem. So we were like, okay, well, if this is okay, we'll just do that. Well, that was a problem. Eventually, Sony contacts us and say, like, hey, could you fix this because it's crashing our network? And we eventually went back and fixed it, but it was kind of a lesson there in like how bad save data can get. Anyways, since then, it's like, could you have big save data? Yes, you could. In more modern games, you could have even bigger save data. A lot of times it occurs with games that are kind of like voxel based, right? In the voxel based games, you end up with a lot of data potentially, and it's a challenge to save it and make it as compact as possible. You can have a lot of save data. So I always worry about making an API like this that caches just into memory and having a run out of memory situation while it's trying to cache stuff. So what we decided is we're going to make this thing cache, but we're also going to offer an opportunity, a feature at some point that you can have it write as it goes. So it doesn't cache, it writes it as it goes, as an alternative, so that you don't get into that, so that you have a chance, if you happen to have really big save data, that it can write it as it goes. So we want to kind of support both. But it should be, for the most part, we're going to mark everything dirty and then flush it when we close the container. So hopefully that explains a little bit more. Script Banana said, wasn't the point of the async methods before that platforms can pop up their guide UI for cloud sync options storage full? Yes. Yeah, that was the original point of that, especially back then. I mean, when this API was first written, it was the first Xbox, or no, it was 360. And 360 still had memory cartridges, right? You could get a little memory cartridge and plug it into your console to save your save data and pull it back out. So the idea was that if they didn't have a memory cartridge, plugged in, so they had no storage, it would prompt them like, hey, insert your memory cartridge so that you can, save or load or whatever. So that was the idea of that async, was to pause to let you do that. That no longer occurs anymore. Every system has save storage. There is no pop something in or pop something out. If there is any async operations like that are handled kind of at startup, when the system first starts up and you first connect the user and everything, that's usually when it does save synchronization and cloud updates. So that's kind of separate from the storage now. The storage doesn't really do that. It can fail, and we always recommend, and what we would do in these cases, I think, is what we'd recommend is, normally when you do your save data, you don't want to just put it in your main thread anyways. You want to move your save data so that it works threaded, so that your main screen can actually be animating something or doing something else at the same time. So knowing that usually if you're going to be processing save data, you're going to be doing it in a task in a separate thread. We don't need to also make the API async. We can make the API a dumb, simple API that you just call, hey, open the container, and if it blocks for a while, that's fine. If you don't want it to do that, put it in a thread. It won't block anymore. We feel like that's a better API than digging into the async stuff, which does work, but it's complicated. It adds a lot of temporary, it creates a lot of garbage, and we don't think it's necessary for this, especially in most cases where this won't happen on most platforms. So that's what originally the API was like that for that reason. Let's get back to some code here. So we need to do these implementations. We need to expose some of this stuff to native code so that the native code can actually return results here. Open container. This will call some native code to create I guess it would call some native code to do the mount of the container and then return a storage container with the mount information. Delete container. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's start with some actual work here because we need to kind of do that. I'm not sure who uses this. Looks like nobody at the moment. If that's the case, I am going to purge it. So all these need to be passed to native code so that they can actually do something. And so let's start figuring that out. I think we already we added this assets interop somewhere in here. Where is it? We have MG asset, but where does it end up going? Sorry, I wish I could make the Solution Explorer bigger, but don't have a lot of stuff for that. Where's that coming from? There it is. Title container interop is where that's at. Don't like that it has this extra class shoved in here. Also don't like that we don't have a copyright notice at it. Let's fix that while I'm seeing shit. All right, back to this. Another post from Square Bananas. I've seen plenty of guide pop-ups on the Xbox One for cloud sync options. I use the asynchronous there still. Yeah, I mean, those still can come up. Usually they're done at startup or when user is signing in. I don't know if you're using like I'm not sure which API you're using at that time, but I know that those pop-ups do occur. Yes, usually when game startup occurs or when the user is selected, is when those things occur. It's not necessarily during saving itself. So that's the difference. Hey, look, we got a spammer. Bye, spammer. Oh, I missed something from Roz earlier. Kind of a sidetrack here. So Roz says, Town, thanks for making Brute Brother. Only had to fix a couple generic issues. Just working on the unit test. We'll push a couple PRs for it. Yeah, thanks, Roz. He works on some console stuff. We've been there's some news for the Brute stuff here coming soon. Working on something there that is a pretty big update to all that stuff. We're also Brute, for the people that don't know, is a cross compiler that I wrote. Gosh, I think I wrote it back in 2018 or 2019 or something like that. I wrote it originally because we needed to port MonoGame titles to PlayStation Vita, and there was no solution there for .NET. So I thought, I'll spend a weekend and I will write a cross compiler that converts that GDC. I had gone to GDC and took a private meeting with Mozilla, and they were showing off Unreal Engine running in the browser. This was the beginning of the cross compile of C and C++ code to JavaScript. They were showing that off that year. So I had a private demo of that and was like, this is awesome. This is great. And then when I went back home, I was thinking about the Vita issue, and it sucks that we don't have a C# implementation. There was a lot of politics around it, at the time to get that done. I thought, oh, well, this is a great idea. What if you can cross-compile C++ to JavaScript? Why can't I cross-compile C# to C++, right? So that was the idea, is that I would take C#, convert it to C++ code, compile it with a C++ compiler, and get that comes with like Vita and Xbox and PlayStation and every platform for the most part, and generate C++ code that can run on whatever native platform I want. I thought, oh, a weekend or two, it'll be done. Well, it took a lot longer than a weekend or two. It ended up being years of, toil to get it to work. And we finally did get it to work. We shipped some Vita titles. If you played Stardew Valley on Vita, if you played Mercenary Kings on Vita, if you played, I'm trying to think of the other ones that we shipped there. We shipped a couple of Vita titles that all use this technology. Then eventually we started using it on PlayStation 4, and then we've used it on Xbox. We didn't have to use it on PlayStation 4, but we have been, because it's easier when we have a title that uses the same technology across each platform. We use it on Xbox, even though there's other .NET solutions there. We use it on Switch. We use it on Switch too. So every platform we use this on. And it's not perfect for sure. There's definitely holes in it, but it definitely has some performance advantages, because we took some shortcuts in places, knowing that it's basically written for game development and just how game development works. So that's what Brood is, and that's what he's talking about, and he's using it on some console stuff. So hopefully that enlightens people as to what that is. So let's get back to this. So this is the asset AP, the interop for that. So I'm going to basically make a storage.interop CS, I think, is what I'm going to do. Because I'm lazy, I am going to copy that. Where is that stuff? We kind of have some weird stuff happening here where we get different APIs in places, or different stuff in, things are put into weird places that are not the same on every platform. I'm going to call it storage interop. And that should appear in here. Nope, you're my unit tests. Hey, why aren't you on here yet? Oh, I think it's because it's not working like that. Hang on a second. Here it is, edit project file. All right, there's our storage interop. We don't need you. I mean, there's some things that we might share with Asset. Asset has like a streaming API that it has, and we might do something similar here. We'll have to see. Actually, no, because it's not ever going to write it that way. Yeah, it's never going to work that way, so it shouldn't be a problem. This is repeated in a lot of places. I'm going to do a storage. Basically, I'm going to do one function for every one of these we have. Don't need you. So let's go back to storage device. So we're going to do I'm going to think about what I want to name things. So you can see we're writing a DLL import here. Is it not like? Oh, it's because it's already defined in another place. Yeah, let's just do that. Now it's sharing it with the other implementation of this, which is probably okay. You know, this is different than the other ones. We kind of did a different thing here with some of them. But this, let's follow this pattern and see how it goes. We can always clean this up later. So storage initialize, which just does whatever it needs to do at the low level to initialize itself. What else do we need? We need what does it not like here? Oh, it wants a. Why does it want that? I don't know why it wants that, but we don't want it. And the question is, where should that be called? Probably when it first creates the storage device. Let's see where this guy happens. Oh, no. Let's do. Why does it see it? Oh, because it's an instance-based thing. We don't want that. We'll do this. Actually, could I do it? Yeah, let's not do that. Let's just do this. So first time it creates a storage device, it'll call initialize on the system. That works, and we don't have to change anything up here, and it doesn't affect any other native platforms, just affects this one. Let's see, total space. So we're gonna do each one of these one at a time here. Yeah. Stuff like this, I wonder. Now, this is going to change dynamically. So this is being called a lot. This one's being called infrequently. I could do something like storage initialize returns the total space available at that time. But in theory, the platform, it could change, right? Like if you free, I mean, I don't know. You could plug in new storage, right? So we want to potentially support having any different amounts, I guess. So, or it could change. Int should be enough, I would think. But let's just do long, just in case. Because that also returns long, so that's probably good. We're going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to copy some stuff, speed this process up. Let's get this one written, and then we'll move over to the other ones and see what we need to do there. So, get free space. Okay, so we have those. So let's get to the nitty-gritty here of these guys. So, not long there. Oh, did like it. Open container. So we're going to want to pass the string to native code and say, hey, we want this container. And we want it to return a storage container, but we want to probably wrap it. My guess is that what we want here is we want to return some identifier back. And we do this. We do this in one of the other interops. Where is it? I guess media does it as well. Does it? No, maybe media doesn't. It does pass a bunch of stuff in. It'll be useful to look at in a minute. video and audio decoder APIs might do it. I mean, for sure, I believe it passes in a string. So that's a good example of how we want to pass in string data potentially. Yep, so that's what we want to pass in strings. I'm just going to follow the pattern here. I hate this. I hate Marshall as. I hate it because I worry that it's going to potentially, do a bunch of garbage generation and stuff like that. But again, you shouldn't be calling, you shouldn't be opening the container that often. So if it does generate garbage, it's not the end of the world, I guess, as much as I don't like it. All right, so we're going to do that. It's going to return what we want it to return here is going to be where's one of these guys? Yeah, so what we did was we made these structs or these handle types. That's what we want. We want to do the same thing here. In the public, yeah. We want to do so it's just a handle. We don't know what it is. Like this is a special identifier that we added into our interop system. When it sees this, it says, oh, it's just a struct that's, it has no definition of what the internals of it is, so it can return back a pointer to this guy. So we wanted to do that, and I think how we do it is, returns it as a pointer. We want to do that. And we want to storage device. Oh, wrong one. This bothers me. I hate just repeated identifiers like that. I think this has the that's what it is. This is basically what I want to pass it so that it works with. It wants a bunch of extra stuff. We'll see how that works out. So it's going to return it with a device, container name, player index. I mean, I don't know if the container name actually needs to be passed along to this guy. At least not in my implementation of it. I mean, this one wants it for whatever. Yeah, I don't know if we want to make this. I think we want to make this internal stuff and not part of this, but I'll leave this alone for right now. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the details of how that thing works. We'll get there. And delete container. So it's going to be basically that. That seems like a good thing out of a bunch of caution is return, did it successfully delete or not? Because that could potentially be an issue at some point. Might as well put that in there. Search interrupt. I'm going to do delete container as well. We're going to put all the storage stuff in here. deleting container. The reason I wanted to put a bool here was, and I need to handle that. There's a trick for bools that you have to do. Where is it? Might be in here. It's going to be in here. Come on. Where are you here? I thought there was a trick here for booleans. I could swear there was. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh no, that was for the old API. Yeah, the old stuff required a trick for booleans. Now it doesn't. So we're good there, I guess. So yeah, just pass the name, delete. So that's this thing. Let's do a region here. That makes it easier to work on that. And then we're going to put the stuff for storage container below it. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's get into storage container, I guess. We're going to have our own, yeah, we're going to have to do our own here, our own constructor. Then we're going to have to make some adjustments potentially. I don't like that at all. It really shouldn't be returning paths at all. It shouldn't require a path. We don't want it to talk about paths. We really want it to be its own API for file access, because otherwise you get lazy and you're like, oh, well, I can just have paths for things, and next thing you know, it doesn't work. So it didn't work like that, but we're going to, how do you do that? Yeah. Or how do you call the other constructor? I guess I can't really call that other constructor. I'm not sure why this player index is used. I think it's used because it wants to name things and do all kinds of garbage. I think I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I really don't think it needs any of it for my usage. Yeah, let's just not worry about that. We're going to just work with this container type. We don't need anything else. All this other stuff can go. Oh, there's the platform initialize. We don't want that happening more there. Or well, let's platform initialize on the container, but we're not going to call it there. We're going to ignore this guy for right now until we get things a little bit more worked out. It's tricky because I'm trying to figure the right path here. I'm going to figure it out for native, then from that I'm going to backport it to the non-native stuff, like the standard desktop stuff. Hello, King Fabian, Viking Fabian. Yes, let us know if these streams are not at great times for everybody. I've been meaning to adjust stream times or try to add additional streams that are at regular times. We were talking the other day, or I'd come across, I don't know if you guys ever remember this show. There was a show on back in the, I guess, early 2000s on a channel called Tech TV called Call for Help. And it was a call-in show, and people would call in with their computer problems, and the host would, go through and help them solve their problems. That like have them live, like, oh, go here and click on this and do that. It was a little bit of a new show and a little bit of fun show, but it was also that. And I was thinking that we might create another stream. I know that Dom's starting a new stream in January that's basically just highlighting your titles and things that people are doing in the community and new games coming out using MonoGame and just stuff around C# and MonoGame. But I think that a call-in show almost that is, hey, here's my problem that I'm having with my game using MonoGame or C# and need help with that. I think that might be an interesting show, but that's something for later. But we're planning to add some more shows and some more, things that are interactive. Basically, I think that would be more fun and would just kind of help people move forward with this stuff and learn how to solve these problems. So yeah, that's something that's on our agenda. So I'm just going to have it grab the container. So now this should be the only guy that does this. And I'm going to just do that. It doesn't need to know about the device at this point, at least. I think everything should communicate through the container. The device is, I guess, for all intents and purposes, global, because we're not kind of, there's only one device. You just create this device class and access it. It's not something that has to, it's not something that you have to set up and tear down, even though some systems it might be. I guess in every console game I've done, I've never torn down the save system. It's like you never shut down, the game just stops running at some point. You never shut down the system, so having a shutdown for the device probably doesn't make sense. And this is just going to happen one time, and so the device stuff is kind of a global. Everything else is based on the container. So I think we have what we need here for this API. So let's look at storage device. Just calls the initialize. I'm sorry. We have everything for the device. Let's go look at the container. So we don't need a platform initialized in the container. So we need to start implementing these guys. Open file, get file name. So that's an enumeration of all the files in this container. And that's a full enumeration. I think that it has a pattern match, which is, important to get right. Get directory names, get file names. Did you forget? One with a pattern and one without. That seems unnecessary. Let's just make that, search pattern or no search pattern. Get directory name, same thing. Unnecessary to have two APIs. Either it has a search pattern or it doesn't. File exists. Yes, that makes sense. Directory exists. I'm just kind of looking through all these to make sure I understand what's here. Create directory, platform container, platform run container, sanitize file name. I don't think we want that because it should be handled internal to the thing. Should handle any file name cleanup that occurs. And we're going to have to expose some high level rules of these are the things that are allowed in file names in save data, in order to ensure that it's cross-platform, which mostly just means you can't just do weird stuff. Like some save systems do not only support ASCII for file names. So if you put the user's name in there and it's in Chinese or something, it's not going to work. So we want to highlight bad file paths and kind of sanitize them at a high level and give you warnings that you're doing something wrong on PC, so that when you finally go to port to console or bring to console, you don't get surprised that stuff doesn't work. All right, so this API looks generally like what we want here, I think. So I think this is accurate. So the question is how to approach some of this. So the idea with storage container is that we do want to have it kind of buffer on the C# side and let C# do some work that it can do, and then let the native side do the part that's important to it. So we don't want it to just open file, platform open file should not just, we're not trying to interop a stream between native code and C#. We want to tell the system, like, hey, we want to open this file, so it has the ability to say, no, that failed, you can't do it, or whatever. But as far as, I guess it depends how you're opening the file, right? Like, and it does ask the question, like, should we have a difference between, opening the file for writing or reading, or both? Really, you should probably decide what you're going to do it for, not for both, generally. And yeah, there might need to be some limitations here. Like, this was just passing straight through, like, oh, we're just going to do anything. And like, file share, like, that's not important for something like this. I mean, it is if it's a general file system. I assume that some of this stuff was always in storage container. Let's go look at that API, huh? Let's go, we were looking at it earlier, I think. Damn it. I hate it when I run into this. Like, for some reason, like, the storage container class has no methods in it, and I think that that's not accurate. Yeah, I've run into this before. Let me see if I have an old XNA doc. I used to have some old XNA docs around. Actually, I think MonoGame actually has, nope, don't want that. I think MonoGame actually has an archive of the old XNA docs. Nope. Maybe it was Simon that had it. Yeah, Simon might have it somewhere. Let me move this to off screen because it's probably not, it's sensitive and probably you guys shouldn't see this stuff. Damn it. Wish I had it. This always gets me. You'd think I'd have one of these around somewhere. I do not, it looks like. No, it's not a Watch Tom struggle stream. It's me being annoyed that I don't have the data that I want. And I really don't know why, that storage container class has kind of scrubbed the, these APIs are missing from here. And that really bothers me when that happens. Is there like a version or something? Maybe the right one. Hey, look, that's the right one. It has the methods on it. See, why are there two different ones listed and one has methods and one doesn't? It's freaking weird. Okay. So this one has the methods. Okay, so it has a create file versus an open file. The open file has file modes, access, and file share, but I think we're going to drop some of these. Because, I mean, really, I'd like to simplify it and drop some functionality. Was I on XNA 1? Square bananas. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. I run into that every once in a while. I go look for it, and it always returns the initial, this old version of it that had almost no API in it. So anyways, there is a create file, which just returns a new file that you're going to write a new file. It's weird that it has a create file, that it has an open file that can also do creation. I hate when APIs are written that way. Because file mode is there for, create, truncate, append, blah, 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 all that stuff. And you might want to have some of this stuff maybe, or you want to at least have the option to append, but we already have a create. I think like create. Some of that functionality is probably not needed. I'm just trying to look at and see like what kind of rules we want to have on this. I'll let it do everything for now, and then we'll pare down potentially. I just hate implementing like a very wide-ranging API that does everything. We really don't need that. And like this is very much like a file sharing. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna have 15 different systems in your console game talking to the same save data. Like that doesn't happen. It might be something on PC, it's nowhere else. And on PC, you just want it to either, you probably don't want anybody writing to it while you're reading from it, and vice versa. So you just want to do the obvious file share stuff. But even then, it doesn't matter because how we're going to do this. So the implementation that we have, so there's nothing written here for this, but we do have a implementation for the other platforms. Let's go find those real quick. Let's see, where are we at? Right, so he had implemented one for desktop. Oh, wrong file. Yeah. So basically what he was approaching, and this is right, generally the right approach is basically what we want to do is if we want to cache, and at the very least we want to cache while a file is open. The C# side just needs to return either a memory stream if you're writing a new file, or fetch the chunk of memory that it needs for storage, and then return you a memory stream to that, so that it can all operate in memory and be generally like very singular operations on the disk, is what you basically want. We don't want an API where it's interrupting back with native code for save data all the time. It's unnecessary for it to, on a byte by byte basis, be writing bytes to save data. So yeah, we want to do something very similar to this. So let's start peeling off the easy APIs, then work our way to the more complicated ones. That might help us come up with a design or decide what the final design is as we go here. All right, so let's peel off the easy ones first. Been all over the place, so let's go back to here. Get file names. These are a little bit more complicated. We'll start with simpler ones. File exists. That's an easy one, right? Let's start there. We're going to pass in first the container, and we're going to pass in the name, the file. seems like a reasonable. That seems reasonable for an API. It's going to end up being unsafe because of what they are. Right. Delete file, that should also be a pretty straightforward one. With some of these, I do wonder whether we need to identify errors and return error cases. Probably not a bad idea to do so. Actually, wait, no, this is wrong. Wait, is it? Well, no, maybe it's not wrong. We really do want it to manage the, like one of the designs that we had in the desktop version of this was that it would just keep everything in basically a big dictionary of file paths to blobs of data, you know, just a byte array of data. So there'd be a file path and a blob of data, file path and a blob of data, you know, so that you would know what all the files are. It would stream those all into memory when you would first open the container. It would just gather everything, or at least gather the files that exist so you can operate on those directly. And then it would write, then if you were reading from it, it would lazily get the file data as necessary and only get it once unless you actually modify it, you know, and then when you write, flush at the end, you know, it would flush it at the end after you made your changes in commit, it would flush everything. So that was the original design of that. And maybe I still want to do that at the C# level and only have this actually, yeah, what we might want to do is we might want to have it so that when you open the container, it basically gathers enough information at the beginning that, you know, it doesn't have to do a lot of disk work after that, you know, and that might be the better way to do this potentially. I don't know. It's tricky because it's like, do we want to do it live? Do we want it to like handle cases like somebody's changing my file data under the hood while I'm reading it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It's tricky. This is why there's not just, you know, designing these APIs are hard for that reason, you know, is coming up with like all the different conditions. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking about mobile and desktop and console and trying to come up with one approach to this. And it's tricky. I guess what's going to be easier to implement and easier to maintain? Because at the very beginning, we open the storage container, it could just go ahead and enumerate and here are all the files that exist in this container. You know, I open the container, let me just get a list of all the files that are in the container and enumerate that stuff, which that's a hard interop API there is like, hey, I want to enumerate all the files in the system. But it might be the right thing is for it to do that. And then after I have all the files in the system, I want to be able to get the data from it. I want to call a native API and say like, hey, give me the contents of this file, and it should load it all in the memory and return it to me so that I have it so that someone can then read it. And then when I flush, I want to pass it the contents of the file, say, here's the file data, flush this. And then have some calls for like, hey, delete this file, and stuff like that to synchronize, basically. So yeah, and I wonder if some of that could just be handled by the container under the hood. You know, It's tricky. Because I could pass it like this, and then under the hood, it could be doing exactly that. But if I handle it at a higher level, maybe it's more reusable. Yeah, tricky. Let's keep going down this path for now. Maybe. I hate being decisive like this on stream. It sucks. What I'm fighting is that the native API, I could do it this way, but I'm going to get no benefit from this on the other APIs that we have. Like, because we still have the old mobile APIs, we still have the old desktop stuff that is still written in pure C#, essentially. And we want those to have implementations that are very, very similar to the native one. So we want to share as much as possible and keep the native API to a minimum. So let's do this. Let's experiment a little bit. Let's call this let's just go with that for now. Kind of just experimenting still here. So something like this, if you had an array of all the files that already exist, it could just work at the C# level. It doesn't have to touch native if these were up to date with what's on disk. And stuff like this could work that way as well. You know, assuming that we normalize or clean up our file stuff, you know, it would just be as simple. And I think that's how that's written for this one. This one. Yeah. Contains key file name. Like very, very simple. Like this is scary. It's like, well, what if your slashes are backwards, or there's a lot of unknowns here, but you know, that makes it very simple to approach that. The lock is not a bad thing. Then the container API just becomes an API for, hey, get me enumerate what files are on the container, get me the contents of this file, you know, flush the contents of this file. You know, it becomes a very high level API, you know, and instead of it being, and I guess directories also have to be handled, you know, but there are questions like, should it create directories that are empty? You know, that's probably not. Like, what's the purpose of that? but I can see people doing crazy things potentially. This is why it's so hard to wrangle this. It's like, what are all the possibilities that could happen here? Yeah, if storage container is just a bunch of individual, like write a file, read a file, check if files exist, it's going to be too much, and it doesn't really need to be that. Storage container can be just a API for getting to the low level stuff and doing what it needs to do, but it doesn't need to be like every individual file operation doesn't have to go through it like that. I think that's too much, and this at least provides some caching. It lets us sanitize things, makes the API simpler, and we can share some of this implementation, to the native on the other implementation. So I think that's the right path to take. So I'm going to go down this path, and we'll see what happens. So something like this becomes. It does become this. Now let's worry about sanitization of. Let's worry about sanitizing this stuff later. We probably don't want to just keep an array of bytes. We kind of want to keep some information, I think. I don't know about this, but we'll see. I'll look at you there. No, don't do that. Let's call it content. Might need that later, maybe. Probably use data 0. Not null, it's a file. It is null. It's a directory. Kind of arbitrary. Something like this. See, this is where it gets into like, well, to delete it, you need to know. I mean, it might need to keep a separate. No, let's not do that. Let's do. Hey, look. Is that AI that just happened? Was I just AI'd? I think I was just AI'd there. We'll see about that. This all feels very flimsy at the moment. I don't like it. just realized what I can't do that. It has to be a class because I need to be able to modify it. So this is marking it dirty and saying, hey, set the data to null, which will be a trigger for deleting it, I guess. That doesn't work either because it's always null, so can't tell that. Oh, that's wrong. False. I'm just going to do this. I guess that's true in both cases, it doesn't matter. Let's see what this is called from. It doesn't do any cleanup here. You probably wanted to do some cleanup. I'm pretty sure from every file system that I've worked with that this can deal with that we want to handle everything as we can handle everything as forward slashes and things will work right. Well, don't know anything about that. Probably have some other normalization function somewhere. I'm going to put them in here. Interesting. I'm pretty sure this is Copilot here, right? Like the fact that it's trying to help me out with things like this. I don't know if I like that or not. That normalization might become more complicated later. Just making sure directories end with forward slashes. So here. Yeah, that's what I want to do, I think. What I want it to do is I want it to, we're creating a file. So it needs to try to get a file back out. So if it exists and it's not a directory, which I guess this should never happen really anymore because of how we've identified that directories are always in a slash. Path directory separator characters available too. Yeah, I'm aware of that. The thing that I hate about that directory separator, Swervedan is saying path directory separator characters available too. Yeah, I'm aware of that. The problem that I have with that is that I don't know under all conditions that separator character changes. And this is very reliable. I know it's / is always going to be a / It's not going to magically change on some platform to something else. And I feel just from experience that / work on every single platform, console or everything else. Those that, yeah, Rob Utterly was saying FlashBook's the file system stuff that would work on Android and iOS. So I assume you mean wouldn't work, but yeah, those are tricky issues. And for now, we're going to let this normalization handle it. But I think that I no longer need to have this really. It should be what it is just based on what the name of it is. But I guess this doesn't have the name, so this is fine. That's fine. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore that for right now in order to get things done here. I want to at least get an API here that kind of works or laid out so that I have like some steps towards this by the end of the stream. All right. Let's just do debug. That should not happen. What I do is it's a better way to handle this. Let's do this. Why does it want to be adding one? So let's do. That's so sure. Actually, it worked out okay. was right the first time. Cleaner. All right, so the result, deleted false, should never be a directory. Guess this is what we actually want to do. Make cleaner already. Sturdy, create a memory stream, return the memory stream. That's all it needs to do for create file. Do I know what that's about? We don't want it. Okay, this is because internally it was like, oh, let me read all the contents of the container here. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do this right now. I'm gonna work this out at the low level and ignore this high level stuff as much as possible. I mean, this will kind of break some of this stuff up here for now. Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't like that at all. Hey, load data. It's like, I'm not sure about that API. Don't like it. And that wasn't part of the original API. I don't think it's something that should be in the current API. I mean, maybe there'll be some sort of a refresh, maybe, but really it shouldn't exist. Like, you shouldn't hold on to a container long term. You should create the, open the container, do your work, close the container. If you want to refresh the container, close it and open it again. It'll refresh the container. You don't want to, I don't think you want to have a load data. This is, I guess, what the idea saves all container data synchronously, asynchronously. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about this either. This is sort of kind of the flush, some internal implementation of that. I'm going to start purging some stuff at this high level. And some of the work that I'm doing might end up being moved back up to this public API, maybe, if I feel good about it later. Oof. Yeah, I'm going to be fighting a lot of stuff. Some of this stuff might actually need to be up here for it to work right. We'll see. We'll see. This is going to be messy. So this, assuming that we're up to date, then this becomes something like, let's do file names, I guess, first. So we're going to get a results. Memory garbage and stuff, but that's going to happen whenever you do this stuff. You're going to have some garbage as you're working on this stuff. So if it is a directory, continue. If it is deleted, continue. Otherwise, we're going to return it. Yeah, I think that's all we need to do, I think. I mean, we're not doing anything with the search pattern yet. This is where we need to compare the search pattern and make it work, which is I mean, I've done this work once before, so I kind of know what I need to do there, but it's tricky. But I'm going to ignore it for right now, just to want to make progress. So this is the same thing. It's not a directory, continue. It's deleted, continue. Check the search pattern, otherwise put in the key. And I might want to I'll let it return the backslash or the slash in the path, because I think that's reasonable for it to return that. So we almost have an API here. Still very basic. Trying to redirect these all down to this. So yeah, this is the one that's tricky. Particularly tricky. All right, so do that. Just thinking ahead that I might actually need some of that stuff later. We'll see. So I got the result. It's either going to be null or it's not going to be null. Oh, you know, that's a way to indicate deletion, I guess. Is just set the file or directory, or, well, we don't know what, well, sort of kind of know what type it is, but I don't know, we'll see. So what I need to handle is, am I creating things or am I opening? I guess this is opening. Actually, no, this is creating. Append is like open. Kind of both. bothers me always is that it feels so much like these things overlap. They really make it like I'm gonna ignore file share completely. Don't need to worry about that guy. File access and file mode, and they always seem like they overlap, that these two things have some similarities. I'm going to create it, but I'm going to create it for reading. That doesn't seem like, this doesn't seem to make sense to me a lot of times. So open creating for open and it's deleted or that, then hey, we're not going to throw an exception. We're going to return null in those cases. The high level code can, because this is supposed to be returned a stream object for an open file, I assume, or null. If it's not, we don't want to throw exceptions. Because a file not existing is not an exceptional case. I don't believe the exception should be thrown. It shouldn't be null here, so I should be able to do this is where we need to, well, no, it should already have, it might not have the memory stream is the problem at this point. Like it might have the, because we're not going to, I don't want to load everything from disk all at once. It feels scary to do that because you could have hundreds of megabytes of saved data potentially. And loading it all into memory all at once when you possibly don't need all of it seems bad. So you really want this at this point to say, if I don't have a memory stream, you really want it to call the low level and get the data and create the memory stream from it is what we really wanted to do. So this is where we want to go back to our interop. We're going to kill these guys, I think. But this is possibly when we want to go to our interop. Robert Early says, I have to bail. I will catch up later. Thanks for this. I don't usually catch these streams. They coincide with work, but I'm glad I did today. No, I'm glad you did as well. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm not going to be on for much longer. Unfortunately, I have to limit my time on these things, but I'm going to try to do some more streams in the new year. And I'll try to see if we can get some at a later time so that I can get, some more overlapping people, or maybe I need to do it at an earlier time. Not sure. You guys will have to tell me. Let's see. So a file exists. No, what do I need to do here? I want to get the contents of a file. So I want to do. I'm going to say load file. Actually, I'm going to do file load so that's easier. and have it return a byte array. Well, actually, it's going to return a byte pointer. And it's going to assume that you're going to, like how I'm going to make that work is I'm going to make it assume that you're going to be done with that byte pointer before it, like it's going to be temporary. That byte pointer data is going to be temporary. It's going to assume that you're just going to reuse it for the next call, or it's going to persist, but it's, you don't have to delete it or clean it up. I think for that, I have to pass in, how do I do that? How do I convert it from a pointer to that? I think, oh wait, I mean, I can't just do a pointer like that. I don't know what the size of it is or anything like that. That's not ideal. Did I not do it? Thought I did. Oh yeah, I did. This is behind. Oh, lost my position. Come on, there we go. Pointer. What's my mem copy here? I always forget. What I've been using ChatGPT and stuff for lately is for just finding functions that I'm missing. I just don't use Google anymore. Google is not good for any sort of search anymore. All their search is, all of Google's search is basically aimed at selling you ads, and they'd rather have you search 3 or 4 times to find a result on something, or dig deeper so you can see more ads. ChatGPT isn't doing that. So I usually use it to ask simple questions like that. It usually gives me at least a couple answers, and sometimes they're wrong, but at least it's not feeding me ads and I get to my answers quicker. So yeah, let's do that. Well, buffer memory copy versus Marshall copy. Yeah, let's do Marshall copy. That seems better. Marshall copy seems like a better approach. There we go. Doesn't it have a version that's in pointer to byte? Yeah, I mean, that exists. Why doesn't it like this? but that's not the one I'm calling. I want to call this one. Oh, that's what it is. Duh. Probably could have done that in this case. So this is working for this maybe, but this is just one case and there's a bunch of other cases. That's the thing that I hate about this. Let's look at some of the other cases. Maybe as I write the other cases, a unified approach will appear. Hello, Matt. I guess you're a new viewer here. What's the language? Is it C#? Yes, it is C#. To create I guess create's supposed to fail. Yeah, I mean, this has a bunch of rules like it. A create, if it's, you know, it's supposed to throw an exception if it doesn't exist, or if it already exists, like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I really don't want to these APIs to throw exceptions. Throwing exceptions for file operations is stupid. Especially things like the file not existing. It should just return a null stream. The stream doesn't exist. That's a common thing for a file not to exist. It's not an exceptional case, which is what exceptions were originally for. There's a good talk that I've seen in the past from Raymond Chen from Microsoft that talks about the struggles with exceptions and stuff, which I believe he was on the side of, like, files shouldn't throw exceptions, but whatever. It is what it is now. Okay, so actually what we want to do is, if the result is null, we want to actually create a new one. I'm just going to throw away the previous memory stream because this is a new file. So that's create, or the creates open truncate, which is supposed to basically it's like truncate's almost like create because it's just starting over. I'm going to consider it that for right now. I really don't like any of this API. I'm going to consider the other one. I think that's all the cases, so. 10, don't do anything. Just continue from where it left off. I think that'll work. So I think this does what we want it to do. I'm ignoring the read-write stuff. I mean, by default, I think all memory streams are made to read-write by default, I believe. So this is where it really needs to create the container, then say like, hey, container, give me a list of all the content that's in it. This is what's missing there. And really all this stuff maybe needs to move to the higher level API up to this guy. So it can be used on all platforms. The difference being that instead of calling our native API stuff here for this and this container class, it needs to call this API and say, hey, resolve your container, however you're supposed to resolve it. I think this is the direction we want to head. Yep. Man, I wish I could sit here and stream for another couple hours and get through the rest of this, but I cannot. Busy day, especially here before the holidays. You know, things get always busy and difficult. Shipping things is hard at this time of the holidays or this time of the year. Everybody's taken off for the year. So if I have to get some stuff done, I got to get it done now. All right. Well, I guess that's it for the stream for today. Sucks I didn't further. I always feel like I'm going to get further, and I never do. It's dumb, but it is what it is. But I think we worked out some stuff here. And I think I can take this a little further and get the rest of this API done fairly quick. I think now it's a good time for me to like step away from it, marinate on some of the ideas, and you know, come at it again with those ideas, you know, a little bit more in mind. I really started this fresh. I didn't have like a strict plan on how I wanted to approach this, so it's kind of figuring it out live. But I think we're heading in the right direction here. I think that anything that we need to do to change this is just streamlining the API that we have, as well as potentially, you know, changing our caching where it might get things like if we eventually want to make sure that it does things like it pre-caches more, we can have it pre-cache more with the same basic API. If we want it to cache less and actually do things more lazily, we can do that as well with how we're kind of defining this. And obviously we'll have to get to the point of actually flushing, which will be the thing that takes our list of files and directories and says, okay, what do I need to do here? This directory was deleted, this file was created, this file was deleted, and actually do that flush. And that'll be platform specific, either for console where it might work differently, but mobile and PC and things like that. So yeah, I think this is almost to where we want it. Unfortunately, not far enough that we can actually test anything. But that might be the next time. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks for being on the stream. As always, we stream on Twitch and YouTube. Follow us on both. We're always looking for more followers there. And Twitch in particular, we've been trying to do better on Twitch. So far, it's been difficult getting some traction there, but we're working on it. And we're always streaming on both. And always, MonoGame is an open source project. We work on your donations and, a few corporate donations, which isn't much. This time of year, we're always looking for some more money coming in, and we're kind of gearing up for next year. So if you find any of this stuff useful, if you want to continue to see, an open source solution that does not, try you into monthly fees or per install licenses or whatever ridiculousness Unity was trying to do, this is the API for you, especially if you want to actually write code and not just drag and drop boxes or drag and drop elements or components. MonoGame is really about writing code and understanding what you're doing and building your own tools and getting something that's very suited to your game. So if that's stuff you're interested in, donate, contribute, watch our other streams, and hopefully this is informational to you. All right, thanks guys. Bye.